In this video, I will cover the movie The Witch, a New England Folktale. It was written and directed by occult director Robert Eggers and distributed by occult distributor A24. I've covered both before in other videos. Eggers is known for being deep historical in his research for his movies. He focuses on mythology, European folklore, and New England folklore because he lived in New England as a child. In the movie The Witch, I believe Eggers is telling us in an occulted way, which is how they love to do it, that European witchcraft was brought to North America by the Anglican Druidic Church. In addition to his deep historical research, if he is in the club, he would also be aware of who brought witchcraft to America. In my research, I do also see a pattern indicating that European witchcraft was brought to North America by the Anglican Druidic Church. I will give many examples in this video, mostly literary. H.P. Lovecraft and Stephen King, from whom Eggers draws inspiration, built an entire suite of New England folk horror based on Puritans in the Anglican Druidic Church. I have many videos about the Druidic Church, and those are in a playlist titled Druid, which I will be uploading soon, and this video will be added to that playlist. To begin, I'm going to play the opening scene in this movie. Often, the opening scene of a movie sets the theme of the plot, which is the case in this movie. The person speaking initially is a pilgrim immigrant, a separatist named William, who migrated from England in the 1600s, and he's addressing the Puritan colonists that he and his family are living alongside. Puritans were distinct from the Pilgrims. Puritans were the wealthy London merchant class of elite families who dominated political, social, cultural, and economic life. They're America's aristocracy who made up the Anglican Druidic Church. Eggers relies on Puritan prayer manuals as the basis for history included in some of this plot. In contrast, the Pilgrims believed the Anglican Druidic Church was corrupted and wanted a complete break. William and his family represent the Pilgrims. The Puritans did not want to break from the Anglican Druidic Church, and they arrived in the colonies later and were given land and political power. The deputy governor and his crew, who William is addressing in this scene, represent the Puritans. I'll play the scene now.
What went we out into this wilderness to find? Leaving our country, kindred, our fathers' houses. We travailed a vast ocean. For what? For what?
We must ask thee to be silent.
Was it not for the pure and faithful dispensation of the Gospels and the kingdom of God?
No more. We are your judges, and not you ours.
I cannot be judged by false Christians, for I have done nothing save preach Christ's true gospel.
Must you continue to dishonor the laws of the Commonwealth and the Church with your prideful conceit?
If my conscience sees it fit.
Then shall you be banished from this plantation's liberties.
I would be glad on it.
Then take your leave and trouble us no further.
How sadly hath the Lord testified against you. Catherine.
Thomasin.
So he was challenging their authority for which he and his family are banished from the colony. And throughout the movie there are clues that these church Puritans really hated this family for their rebellion against this church. This will become important as the plot plays out. because I think Eggers is suggesting that these church Puritans are responsible for the evil that befalls the family after they're banished. So William, the family's patriarch, says in that scene, "What we went out into this wilderness to find," he's speaking of America, North America, "leaving our country, kindred, our fathers' houses," speaking of England. "We traveled a vast ocean for what? Was it not for the pure and faithful dispensation of the Gospels in the kingdom of God?" So he's implying there that the Puritans are not following the faith. The deputy governor replies, "No more, we are your judges and not you ours." Then William says, "I cannot be judged by false Christians, for I have done nothing save preach Christ through the gospel." And then the Commonwealth government replies, "Must you continue to dishonor the laws of the Commonwealth and the church with your prideful conceit?" And then they banish William and his family from the colony. The Commonwealth in the U.S. during the 17th century was governed by a British company charter. In some cases, a Lord Deputy acted as the direct representative of the king, for example, Lord Mountjoy in 1600. Historically, Thomas Dudley served as the first deputy governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony. He would have been the deputy governor during the period the movie was set in the 1630s. Thomas Dudley was a Puritan, born in England, and a leading political figure in the Commonwealth colonies. His family had connections to the Sutton Dudleys of Dudley Castle, the Duke of Northumberland, the Earls of Warwick and Leicester, Viscounts and Barons. This is the Dudley Castle. He was founder of Cambridge, Massachusetts, and a key promoter and charter signer of Harvard College. As stated before, the Puritans were distinct from the Pilgrims. The Pilgrims founded Plymouth Colony in 1620, and there were only 100 families. The Pilgrims believed the Anglican Druidic Church was corrupted and wanted a complete break to live freely without Anglican Druidic hierarchy. Because separating from the state church was illegal, they faced severe penalties in England, which caused them to migrate. Those pilgrims would have been the common people who did not travel in luxury. It would have been a very difficult journey for them, with some of them dying. So I assume they were desperate to get away from the Church of England. And why were they so desperate to get away? Desperate enough to come to a foreign land inhabited by natives. What was so bad about the Church of England? Then the Puritans arrived in North America later, in 1630. The Puritans did not want to break from the Anglican Druidic Church. The claim is that they wanted to reform the church from within, but we're going to challenge that because I believe the Puritans who came to America were witches sent to govern and establish that Druidic religion here. For one thing, it was common for the Pilgrims to be banished from the colonies if they came against the religion of the Puritans. I said before that there are clues that Eggers is suggesting in his movie, The Witch, that the Puritans are responsible for the evil that befalls the Pilgrim family after they are banished from the colony. When they're banished, they go to a very remote location far away from others in the colony, and nobody else is around for miles. In addition to their crops failing and the threat of starvation, the first thing that is terrible that happens to this family is that a witch in the woods steals and murders the family's infant and uses his body to make a flying ointment. This witch. Eggers borrows imagery from the artist Francisco Goya. And Goya was a court painter to the Spanish crown. He painted at least 100 paintings of Spanish royalty, and maybe half of the male portraits are painted with a hidden hand. He also painted this painting of Saturn devouring his son, which is considered by some to be one of the most terrifying works in the history of art. He also painted Sacrifice to Pan, Sacrifice to Vesta, which is a Roman goddess, The Rape of Europa, Witch's Flight, Incantation, The Devil's Lamp, and The Witch's Kitchen. So, where did this witch in the woods in the movie come from, and why is she there when nobody else is around except for this family? These questions are left unanswered in the movie, but it seems as if she is specifically put there to target this family. They don't initially know that it was a witch who took the infant, but some suspect that it was, and others think that it might have been a wolf. So, the next child to die is the oldest boy, who also stumbles onto the witch's hovel, and she possesses him and he dies. And then after that, the mother and father go crazy. There are also twins in the family, and their characters are based on the historical Godwin children in Boston in 1688, whose reported afflictions of witchcraft influenced the Salem witch trials. They are in communication with Black Phillip, and they are possessed. And Black Phillip is a demonic goat who represents a devil on the farm, and this is Black Phillip. The twins sing a song about Black Phillip, and these are the lyrics. Black Phillip, a crown grows out his head. Black Phillip, to Nanny Queen is wed. Jump to the fence, running in the stall. Black Phillip, king of all. So it's a really creepy nursery rhyme. The main character in the movie, who actually does become a witch at the end, is Thomasin. Her character is also based on a historical character. She was inspired by Elizabeth Knapp, a teenage girl from Groton, Massachusetts, whose accounts of alleged possession by the devil in 1671 and 72 were famously documented. Thomasin's character is played by Anna Taylor-Joy, who is the daughter of a diplomat, and she definitely has Sampaku eyes. And here she's doing one-eye symbolism. She was also a witch in the Northman movie, also by Eggers. Towards the end of the movie, Thomasin is locked up with Black Phillip, the demonic goat, a demonic rabbit, and the possessed twins. And this is the turning point for her. After Black Phillip murders William, the patriarch, and then Thomasin murders her mother, Thomasin asks Black Phillip to talk with her, and he appears to her as a man, and he has her sign a book, sealing her fate as a witch. I'll play that scene.
Black Phillip, I conjure thee to speak to me. Speak as thou dost speak to Jonas and Mercy. Dost thou understand my English tongue? Answer me.
What dost thou want?
What canst thou give?
Wouldst thou like the taste of butter? A pretty dress? Wouldst thou like to live deliciously?
Yes.
Wouldst thou like to see the world?
What will you from me?
Dost thou see a book before thee? Remove thy shift.
I cannot write my name.
I will guide thy hand.
So he's going to guide her hand. And then he leads her into the woods, very nearby the farm, to a witch's sabbath, with several witches doing a ritual around the fire. As mentioned before, the family was banished to a very remote location where nobody else is around for miles and miles. So where did all these witches come from, and why are they there when nobody else is around except for this family? You know, what's the point of being a witch if there's nobody to target? It seems that they are specifically there to target the family, and specifically the teenage daughter, Thomasin. Eggers borrows imagery from the artist Francisco Goya again for this witch's Sabbath, with Black Philip the goat facilitating the Sabbath. The entire plot, from beginning to end, reeks of the Puritans who hated this family and were of the Commonwealth and the Anglican Druidic Church, having a hand in all of these events that occurred within the family. So to demonstrate my theory, we're going to look at some of the people who came to the U.S. as part of the Puritan migration and were part of the Anglican Druidic Church. The majority of Europeans who settled in New England were bloodliners, merchants, and land and slave owners, witches whose trips were funded by the crown, sent to govern. During the American colonial period, only freemen could vote or hold public office. In Massachusetts, the requirement to become a freeman included land ownership, oath of loyalty to the government of that time, which would have been the Commonwealth, and Anglican Church membership. So the Pilgrims were poor and not given land. It was the Puritans and members of the Anglican Druidic Church who could vote and hold office, so they're the ones who had the power. The British monarch is supreme governor of the Anglican Druidic Church, the same person who's head of British Freemasonry in all the Commonwealth nations. The king appoints archbishops, bishops, and deans of cathedrals. And there were also Anglican clergy sent to America who were also bloodliners and typically educated at Oxford and Cambridge. So the Anglican Church continued in America, specifically New England. New England is the setting of both Lovecraft and King's writings, and the Anglican Church is the foundation of the occult in New England in both of those writings. Lovecraft and King, who built an entire suite of New England folklore based on the Anglican Church. This theme of the Anglican Church runs through a lot of pagan writing, redefined as folk literature, not just H.P. Lovecraft and Stephen King, but let's look at those two first. Jerusalem's Lot is the foundational short story to the Dark Tower multiverse series of novels written by Stephen King. It's set in the fictional town of Preacher's Corners, Maine, in 1850. Its main character is aristocrat Charles Boone, who is investigating his ancestral home, Chapelwaite, which he finds is a deserted village called Jerusalem's Lot, and it's a decayed Puritan settlement. The village was founded by one of Charles' distant ancestors, who was a leader of an inbred witchcraft cult. I think the main character in Salem's Lot novel is Stephen King because the main character is an author that goes back to the town to revisit his childhood. The narrative built by Stephen King with Jerusalem's Lot is almost identical to H.P. Lovecraft's short story The Festival, which was the foundational story to Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos. The Festival is set in Marblehead, Massachusetts, which is New England, and the plot is his ancient ancestors who hold festival and sacrifice each year and who summon demonic monsters. Another very significant commonality in those two foundational stories is the Anglican Church, central to both. So now we can look at other examples in literature. Ambrose Bierce, author of The Devil's Dictionary, is regarded as one of the most influential authors in the U.S. and ranked alongside Edgar Allan Poe and H.P. Lovecraft. His book, The Devil's Dictionary, was named one of the 100 greatest masterpieces of American literature. His forebears came to North America between 1620 and 1640 as part of the Puritan migration. His mother was a descendant of William Bradford. William Bradford immigrated to the Plymouth colony on the Mayflower in 1620 and was a signatory to the Mayflower Compact and went on to serve as governor of the Plymouth colony intermittently for 30 years. Robert Chambers, author of King in Yellow, published in 1895 about a mysterious and malevolent supernatural and Gothic entity known as the King in Yellow. The King in Yellow is central to H.P. Lovecraft's Cthulhu mythos and associated with a deity Hastur and black stars. Another one of his stories made it into a silent movie in 1919 titled The Black Star. Robert Chambers' father was William Chambers, a lieutenant in the British Royal Navy. His wife was a descendant of Roger Williams, the founder of Providence, Rhode Island. Roger Williams was born in London around 1603, the son of a merchant who migrated to New England. He was originally Church of England, which is the Anglican Druidic Church, and he became a Puritan. Evgenia Sands, wife of Julian Sands, who starred in the movie The Warlock, who recently died mysteriously. Evgenia is a British-American playwright, author, and journalist who was educated at Oxford. She's the daughter of Israel Sitkowitz and Lady Caroline Blackwood, who was also educated at Oxford and wrote for Encounter magazine, which promoted the geopolitical interests of the U.S. government and received covert funding from the CIA and MI6. She's related to the Blackwoods of the occult Blackwoods magazine, a combination of Tory politics and Gothic horror. Lady Blackwood was married to Lucian Freud, who was Order of Merit and Order of Companions of Honor. His private funeral was officiated by Anglican Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, and Rowan is a Druidic name. Then Lady Blackwood married Evgenia's father, Israel Sitkowitz, a Polish Jew, pianist and composer and member of Shakespeare and Company. Her third marriage was to American poet Robert Lowell, who descends from a Boston Brahmin family. His mother was a descendant of William Samuel Johnson, a signer of the U.S. Constitution. The Lowell family also included a Civil War general, several poets, and several Anglican clergymen. Robert Lowell's father was a U.S. Navy, otherwise known as Royal Navy, commander. Robert Lowell was hospitalized many times due to bipolar disorder, which is demonic possession. Now we're going to move on to Puritans who governed and were leaders of the Anglican Druidic Church. Let's look at the Boston Brahmins. The Boston Brahmins is a name given to members of Boston's historic upper class, old elite 19th century New England, defined by inherited wealth and deep English Puritan roots dating to the 1600s. They founded or funded major institutions like Harvard, MIT, and the Boston Symphony Orchestra. The name was taken from Hindu Brahmin, which were members of the highest Hindu caste, traditionally compromising priests, teachers, and intellectuals responsible for spiritual leadership. They are considered the top tier of their social hierarchy in India, focusing on sacred knowledge, education, and rituals. The term is also used to describe the elite, educated upper class of Boston Brahmins. So why would these Boston Brahmins take their name from this Hindu religion, Hindu priests? Boston Brahmins were also high Anglican church clergy and leadership. Prominent families included the Adams family, Presidents John Quincy Adams, diplomat Charles Francis Adams Jr., and author Henry Adams. The Lowell family, poet James Russell Lowell, and astronomer Percival Lowell. The Forbes family, merchant John Murray Forbes and politician John Forbes Carey. The Lodge family, Senator Henry Cabot Lodge and Henry Cabot Lodge Jr. Other notable individuals that were Boston Brahmins were author and physician Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr., poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, Isabella Stewart Gardner, and Bill Gates. Thomas Mayhew, the patriarch of the Boston Brahmin Mayhews, was born in Wiltshire, England. He migrated to Massachusetts in 1631 during the Great Migration of Puritans. Thomas Mayhew was appointed to manage properties, engage in trade and shipbuilding. He was granted the island of Martha's Vineyard in Nantucket and adjacent lands in 1642 by Sir Ferdinando Gorges and the Earl of Stirling. Thomas Mayhew and Jonathan Mayhew, the Anglican pastor of Old West Church, are related to Benjamin Franklin of the Hellfire Club, Taylor Swift, and Bill Gates. Jonathan Mayhew, descended from Thomas, was also Society for the Propagation of the Gospel in Foreign Parts, also known as the Society. The Society was a branch of the Anglican Church established to promote Anglicanism, including in the schools. It was a UK organization incorporated under Royal Charter by King William III. The clergy were ordained, university-educated men, described by Thomas Jefferson as Anglican Jesuits. This organization owned thousands of slaves and forced labor on plantations, mostly in Barbados. The slaves often died of disease and overwork, and were even branded with the word society. The society has expanded globally, establishing mission outposts in Canada, Australia, India, Japan, China, and Korea. Samuel Chapin, Puritan deacon of the Anglican Church, also from Devonshire, England, like the witches in Marblehead. Samuel Chapin had many famous direct descendants, including U.S. Presidents Grover Cleveland and William Howard Taft, Canadian Prime Minister Richard Bedford Bennett, J.P. Morgan, poet and playwright T.S. Eliot, auto industry pioneers, painters, jazz drummer Jim Chapin and his sons, singers Harry Chapin, Tom Chapin, and Steve Chapin, and singer Mary Chapin Carpenter. Robert Ludlow, Puritan, born in 1590 in Wiltshire, England, son of Sir Thomas Ludlow, graduated at Oxford and then was shipped off to America in 1630. He settled at Dorchester, Massachusetts, was chosen magistrate in the Court of Assistance for the Massachusetts Bay Colony, and then he became deputy governor. Ludlow Castle is the Palace of Princes because it was a temporary home to several holders of the title Prince of Wales, including King Edward V and Arthur Tudor. Hezekiah Usher I immigrated from England to the Massachusetts Bay Colony. The Usher family were well known for being among the first to sell and print books in the colonies. The Ushers helped found the first church in Boston and held several positions in town government. Hezekiah Usher I was a member of the Old South Meeting House in Boston, and the Old South Meeting House was a Puritan church. It was also the organizing point for the Boston Tea Party in 1773. His son, Hezekiah Usher II, had the House of Usher built in his honor. When the house was torn down in 1830, there were dead bodies found hidden in the cellar walls. The Crane family. Jasper Crane Sr. was the progenitor who settled the U.S., born in England around 1610, a wealthy London merchant. Then he migrated to Massachusetts in 1637. His migration is referred to as the Puritan Great Migration, and he was a Puritan religious leader. In 1639, he signed the original pact for the town of New Haven. His house is where the Yale University Business Building is now located. Then a long line of Cranes descended and were prominent. Following Jasper, you had Stephen Crane, Colonel Ichabod Crane, William Crane, and so on. This is not an exhaustive list, but it does give you a good idea of who these witches are. In summary, in the movie The Witch, a New England folk tale, I believe Eggers is telling us that European witchcraft was brought to North America by the Anglican Druidic Church, just like Stephen King and H.P. Lovecraft did in their New England folk horror. Thanks for listening.